my screen? Okay, thank you. Okay, hi everyone, I am Deyi Yin, and the work I'm going to present here is invasional meltdown in a long-term successional plant community. And biotic interactions fundamentally influence populations, communities, and ecosystem processes. Biotic interactions typically include negative biotic interactions and positive biotic interactions, and both can influence the establishment and spread of species in communities. Although positive interactions play key roles, they have received far less attention than negative biotic interactions, such as competition and predation. At the turn of this century, several reviews highlighted the importance of positive interactions. However, many questions about positive interactions remain unknown, including how common are the positive interactions among species in communities, and which of the negative and the positive interactions dominate the succession of communities. In addition, biotic interactions among invasive species is also of great research interest. Levine et al. In 2004 found that negative biotic interactions often limit the spread of non-native species, while rarely prevent the establishment of the non-native species. Positive interactions among non-native species, which is termed as invasional meltdown, though frequently discussed in the past 2 decades, very little is known about the frequency and the prevalence of the positive interactions among non-native species in communities. So in this study, our first question is to ask, how common are the positive interactions among species in plant communities, and will the relative importance of negative and positive interactions change with different response variables that are associated with population establishment and spread? To address these questions, we use the data of Beal small succession field, which to our best knowledge is the longest continuous study of post-agricultural secondary succession. In this study, we selected 25 most frequent native and 25 most frequent exotic species for analysis, and in which woody species were excluded. We modeled the probability of occurrence, survival, colonization, and population growth rates as a function of the percentage cover of a second species by Bayesian hierarchical modeling using JAX. The occupant state model was used to model different response variables over time, and the coefficients were used to represent the direction and the magnitude of pairwise biotic interactions. And here are the frequencies of negative, neutral, and positive interactions on each focal species occurrence. For these 50 selected species, we found that the frequencies of the positive interactions of all focal species are significantly higher than the frequencies of negative interactions. We then divided the results into 4 different types based on species origin of the interacting species pairs. And the frequencies of positive interactions are also higher than that of the negative interactions across different types of species pairs. And the similar trend was also found in species survival and colonization, where the frequencies of positive interactions are also higher than the frequencies of negative interactions. However, for population growth rates, we found that the frequencies of positive interactions of focal species, each focal species received from other species are significantly lower than the frequencies of negative interactions. We then asked what characteristics of beneficiaries and facilitators influence the frequencies of positive interactions they received and provided. To do this, we modeled the frequencies of positive interactions each beneficiary received and each facilitator provided as functions of different species characteristics. After model selection, we then tested the interaction between the selected variables and species origin to test if the effects of species characteristics vary with species origin. For beneficiaries, we found that for species occurrence, survival and growth rates, species with higher peak cover are likely to receive more facilitation from other species. And for species occurrence, survival and colonization, species with lower leaf nitrogen concentrations are likely to receive more facilitations. While for species colonization, species that reach their peak cover earlier are likely to receive more facilitations. And for facilitators, we found that for species occurrence, survival, and colonization, species that reach their peak cover earlier and species with lower leaf nitrogen concentration are likely to provide more positive interactions to other species. And for population growth rates, species that reach their peak cover earlier and species with larger leaf area and with higher phosphorus concentration are able to provide more facilitations to other species. And these effects seem not very sensitive to species origin. We then asked how will the species phylogenetic functional dissimilarity influence the strength of positive interactions. To address this question, we fit the strengths of the positive interactions with the phylogenetic distance and several trait dissimilarities, and also their interactions with the 4 beneficiary facilitator types. We then found that for species occurrence and colonization, stronger positive interactions are more likely to occur between species that are phylogenetically close relatives and between species with similar seed mass and leaf nitrogen. And for species survival, we found that phylogenetically distant relatives and species pairs with more dissimilar seed mass and species with more dissimilar leaf carbon concentration and leaf area are likely to have stronger positive interactions. And for the population growth rate, the strength of positive interactions are stronger in species pairs that are phylogenetically close relatives and species pairs with more dissimilar seed mass and leaf nitrogen concentration. And for this, for the species survival and population growth rate, the effects unlikely vary with the interacting types based on species origin. And here is a take-home message. The first one is positive interactions might be more common in plant communities than is currently appreciated. And the relative importance of positive and negative interactions might vary with different population processes. And the frequencies and strengths of positive interactions are influenced by species characteristics and sometimes the origin of the beneficiary and the facilitator species. I really appreciate all the help from the QBAS lab and especially the guide from Professor Mark Dodd and the team of Build Small Succession Study and Professor Scott Mylers. Thank you, everyone, and I will take any question from you and suggestion. Thank you.